Hey everybody, welcome back to another rip-roaring episode of the Jodo Cast, your home for Star Wars games, or your Star Wars gaming podcast, or your Star Wars gaming YouTube channel. You're probably watching this on YouTube, maybe. I don't know your life. Anyway, I'm Joe, and joining me is Kurt Larson.
He
Hello.
does know your life. He's been spying on you.
And Leo giving away our trade secrets.
That's something that's built into YouTube that they don't tell you until you create a channel. That
Right,
it,
it's
it
like a
can see
backdoor
you
into
back.
the...
Yeah.
Like, YouTube and the NSA are like this, and they, if you get enough views, they give you data on your people. Like what car they drive, how many kids they have.
Are their
what they ate for
retinas
lunch.
focused on like the right part of the video? Because it all drives your engagement, right? They have to know, did you watch the ad or look away? So they have to know it.
Yeah. So I know. When you skip those ads, I know. And I'm proud of you. Let's see. Let's do a little tiny what you've been playing, because I think this will probably just lead into the main topic. Has anybody been playing anything other than Shatterpoint?
Yeah.
Ooh, Leo in the front.
I've been playing. I played some Legion. We just wrapped up our last league at the local game store.
Did you win?
No, I got third place, fourth place. I don't know. I got a free Ahsoka commander out of
Wow.
it. So
Oh, that's pretty good.
yeah,
Any specific cards that were like the VIPs for you?
I learned how to play Operative Vader finally, but now they just kicked him out of Blizzard Force. So sad times.
Deal with it. No sympathy for Blizzard Force.
Man, so we lost Operative Vader. They made my heavy response stormtroopers more expensive. I don't think it's fair.
Like, oh man, they are raising the tax rate on billionaires. This isn't...
I don't know. I feel like the little bit of feedback I saw was people going like, "Oh, they didn't go far enough." Basically, it seemed like.
Kurt, you been playing anything besides Shatterpoint?
I have been playing Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Have you been playing it, or like?
I mean, it's still.
How's it run these days?
It crashes a lot for me depending on the area, which slows me down a lot. I'm kind of taking my time with it now that it's not like release week. I'm not trying to like rush through, just doing a little bit at a time. So I know I'm going slower than most people did, but I'm enjoying it. I do wish it ran better, but I like the new lightsaber stances and stuff. I've been meeting people and collecting stuff. I think I'm not that far, but definitely going to be sticking with it for a while.
Cool. I guess I've been playing that too. I'm on my second playthrough because I'm going through with Bethany, because we're recording the playthrough. So that's slow because, we only do that every maybe like once, a couple hours a week or something. But there's 5 parts recorded. It's just been on the back burner on the editing priority because of Shatterpoint, which is the thing we've all been playing. And what we're talking about, this is going to be our, I guess, first impressions. Certainly not going to be the last time we ever talk about Shatterpoint.
Well, for us, I mean, it's like second impressions for you.
Yeah, but really the first, real hands-on play time,
I mean, you've had a copy for weeks or months or something while Leo and I had to wait for release date.
I had it a week early. Big shout out to Atomic Mass Games for, throwing that through my window. Somebody goes, "Here you go." I heard a shatter crash in the night. I didn't actually get, I had it assembled and started painting it and didn't actually get a game in until launch day. So I've gotten 2 games under my belt since it came out. I believe you guys said you've each played 1 game, the same game.
Yeah,
we played one together. uh, you know, I guess a partial game.
I
Uh,
think we should
Uh,
related to that, let's walk through the like discussion of the game in the same order someone might be exposed to the game. So starting with the rule book and how the rule book affected your guys' game, because I was a bit shocked to find out how that went. The rule book, I didn't think it was as bad as it ended up turning out to be for you two. So, Kurt, can you tell everybody how you guys what you missed when you played your first game?
I mean, I'm sure we missed like multiple things, but
Most things aren't as egregious.
yeah, the one big thing that I think probably held us back a lot was we didn't realize that the some of the abilities on the cards, which have like the down arrow on them, we
The
didn't
active
realize.
abilities.
Yeah, active abilities. We, I don't think for any specific reason, but we just kind of assumed that those cost an action, you know. And there's like only one line in the rule book in some certain sidebar that says they're only in action if they say action, which none of them do. But that severely limited like what we were doing on each
Right.
turn with most of the characters, especially movement wise. We weren't like getting free jetpacks and stuff other than some of the abilities that are like you get a free thing to someone else, right? We were triggering those, but we weren't doing like force, speed, and Dathomiri and dexterity, all these different things that should have been free movement other than costing force. We were like, well, that takes an action. So our guys weren't, I mean, we definitely had fights up in the middle of the board, but mostly it took a couple turns to get there, and so we probably did a lot less on our turns than the average real game of Shatterpoint, where you're probably zooming around quite a lot with some of the characters.
Yeah, there's so much movement going on that people are just crossing the board, zipping around, pushing each other, running over here, running over there.
Yeah,
So, and I think it is a failure of the rule book. The rule book failed you guys. I think like maybe like 20% of that, or I don't know. Tell me what percent you think. I
it
think
was
some of it
definitely our assumption, right?
right
But it felt like a
as
natural assumption at the time
I've
without something saying.
yeah,
We just
I'm
didn't notice.
I feel like the rule book's laid out really poorly. Personally, I don't.
We were definitely
We
flipping
were
around a lot
yeah
and looking at the right
flipping
page
back and
and not
forth
seeing
a
it.
lot.
Yeah.
Um, it's almost like having a learned playbook and then a like rules reference guide is maybe a better way to do this shit.
well. I my initial impression of the rule book was maybe this is basically a learn to play guide, because the way the information is laid out is sort of the order
To
it's
some extent.
most relevant. But what's weird to me, because I made Shatterpoint Quick Guide, which acts as your rules reference if you're having these same troubles. And when making it, because I'm trying to collate all the information about a single topic on a single entry, the one that comes to mind is like there's an entry under movement called push or pull, and there's a bunch of bullet points about pushing and pulling. And then like 2 pages later, there's a new heading called push and pull, and it's 2 paragraphs with more information. And I think there's a couple instances like that where it's like information about the same topic that's spread out in the rulebook and it's not all in the same place. And that's very, I don't understand why it's like that. Sometimes it's like, okay, here's the information about the actions you can take, and we'll have full entries on what each of these is later, I guess. But like in the case for push and pull, first of all, it's called push and pull in one spot and push or pull in another spot,
And if
and
you're
it's the same.
doing
It's not
it
like they're different things.
if you're doing it in during an attack, you need to look under the attack rules and look under shove, which causes a push and pull, but it's not under the push and pull because it's
I
like a
don't.
specific range and like
Does shove cause a push or pull? I think it's just place them
replace.
range one from where they are.
Yeah, but it's like a different thing from push and pull, right? So it's like a kind of a different place you have to look. Heal is kind of the same way. It's not under the actions, it's under the combat stuff because it's one of the combat things. And if you look under recover action or whatever, it says like, oh, look at this page that's under the attack. So like you said, there's a
Right.
bunch of stuff that's kind of split up in, maybe it was intuitive to the people that wrote it, but when you're playing and you're trying to reference it, I felt it was non-intuitive a lot of time. And even when we were on the right page, it was sometimes easy to miss the exact paragraph you're looking for. uh, I think there's a lot of paragraphs where it just like keeps repeating the same sentence over and over with a
If
different keyword, and it makes it very hard to parse through. And there's a lot of where it's explained the different tie conditions for the objectives and different things. It's like just repeating over and over again. It kind of is a lot to sift through when you're looking for one specific thing. We should have just been using shatterpointquickguide.com, but we were trying to like learn it and see how the rule book works, right?
I thought the way the rulebook existed, because I read it when it first came out, I thought it did give you the information in the order you needed it. Um, that said, I had read it a couple times and built the whole rules
Yeah.
website before sitting down to play it, so I was never actually flipping through the physical rulebook when playing for real.
I mean,
But
when I read through the rule book just after I opened the box, I thought it made sense and I like enjoyed reading it and I thought I understood it. But yeah, when we were trying to reference it during the match, because it's like, oh wait, how does this work again? Then it was like very tricky to find stuff and we missed stuff. So
my take is it's laid out in a way to get you to understand the flow and the basics of the game, and it's really, really not good for referencing specific things.
and there's like specific entries too that we found confusing. I think, and this is not really the rule books part, maybe even the core rules really, but some of the like combat steps in the specific order I think was often confusing. There's some steps you get to first, but then you apply it later and you're kind of like, oh, let me remember that I have this effect and this one comes later than the other effects that are the same symbol that happen later but trigger earlier. You know what I mean? A bunch of stuff like that, like when you're trying to figure out the order of the expertise, some of the different stages like that, I think they will have to maybe rewrite a little bit too. So we'll see.
I didn't like that they have like the big like timing chart in like three different places.
Yeah, there was a
It's,
full page dedicated to like timing in a couple different spots. The attack timing is under the attack, and it's also under, I think, just an appendix for timing, as well as the what you do on your turn.
yeah,
Um,
and that's kind of what I was. Yeah, so it was sort of like it made it hard for me to like if I had it open to that timing chart. That's another thing. It sort of made it hard for me to remember where I was in the book because this exact same chart is in three different places. So
Yeah, there were just so
yeah,
many times I knew I had read an entry, but like finding which page, I'm like flipping and not seeing it. You know what I mean? That's
right.
just
Well,
hard.
at least with the timing charts, it's identical, the same information. Like I was saying with that push and pull, it's two different headings about the same thing that presents different information in different ways in each of the places,
yeah,
Yeah.
which is very strange.
I think if it might have been a different story if it hadn't been so much of like trying to learn as we were playing. Like if I had actually sat down, read through the rule books, you know, at
Hmm.
first, and then played.
Which I will argue, as a responsible gamer, you should have done that before sitting down to play.
See, and I think the rule book should be, like I said, should be laid out in a way to kind of guide you through the whole thing. You know, that's why I like Fantasy Flight's Learn to Play and then rules reference. Split
Right.
into two things system. I think that
I
works
agree.
really well for you. Just crack open a box, pull out your Learn to Play, and you and you just go along with it, and
Yeah, it holds your hand for like a basic first game, and then it'll say, okay, next time you can layer in these rules. And then if you ever have a question about literally anything, just look it up alphabetically here. I like that.
Yeah. And luckily we do have the ShatterpointQuickGuide.com, which kind of fills
yeah,
that
like I
need
said,
now, but
I think once you know, once we like have the flow of the game down, that's what we'll be doing is going to that site to look up specific things like, oh, what does steadfast do again?
It
Or
does
whatever.
make me wonder. Yeah, it's really helpful for those keywords too, like protection and steadfast and sharpshooter or whatever they're all called. Speaking of the rules, before we get into um, the gameplay, which I feel like at this point maybe people think we don't like the game. I don't know. I'm excited to hear what you guys think. I'm really into it. But speaking of rules, the abilities on the character cards still very strange to me in how they're worded. So they say things like, let me just find a real wordy one real quick.
yeah, there a lot of them are very wordy, especially as it applies to like characters in this unit or whatever. And there's
Right.
only one character 90% of the time, right? And so it adds a lot of verbiage.
Right. It gets real wordy like deflect after a ranged attack targeting a character in this unit is resolved. This unit may use this ability. If the attack roll contain one or more fails, the attacking unit suffers damage. Um like you said, a lot of them say a character in this unit when it is a single character unit. Some of them are very clearly like the identity abilities. Uh the whole point of the identity abilities is it's unique to this character. You see force speed. Okay, Ahsoka has force speed. Lord Maul has force speed. It's the exact same title. It's the exact same text. Each character in this unit may dash. Okay, that seems like something you could reuse later. Like that's fine.
And there
When you
might be
have
a
the
multi-unit or multi-character unit with that ability maybe somewhere down the road.
right,
Somewhere
what
down
is
the road,
interesting
maybe.
is let's look at Ventress's. Let's see, Deathmere and Dexterity. Each character in this unit may jump. This unit may use this ability 2 times during its activation instead of the normal one, which is a. Um, but if we look at Padawan Ahsoka Tano, it says she is fearless. Each character in this unit may jump. This unit may. It's the same ability with a different title,
hmm
which coming from other game systems is very strange to me. Like you'd think it would just say something like nimble. This is the text. You see the word nimble, you know what it does. Now I see, oh, she is fearless, Dathomirian dexterity. Like those are different. Uh, they got different titles, but is the exact same ability, and that's strange to me, which kind of undoes the reusability argument we were making with force speed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And for like
But it's just
readability, I just feel like, especially when we don't have any characters it would apply to yet, like just have a different wording of it once you get to multi-character. Instead of like over engineering it.
if it's not as reusable as it looks, why not just say instead of each character in this unit may put the name of the character, Ahsoka Tano may advance,
Yeah.
because like Fierce Protector exclusive to Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More character. When an enemy character wounds another allied unit, after the effect is resolved, one character in this unit may advance toward the character, then the character that moved, then the character that moved. It's
It's
just
you.
Ahsoka.
Just say
Like
like you or
there's
Hisoka.
no
Yeah.
other instance.
Yeah.
Like it's like it feels very, which I appreciate. It feels very like an attempt to get ahead of rules lawyer bullshit.
Yeah.
With it doesn't seem like it would though, because there's a lot of instances where you have to get in your head like who is this character referring to? Is it like one of the guys in my multi-character unit? Is it the allied character? Is it the allied character that I just bestowed a benefit on? If it just used the name of the character on the ability, like it would make that clearer. But I don't know. It's not
Yeah.
a huge
It's
deal, but it does like make your brain have to work harder to get through all of the ability than I think
for
is
sure.
necessary.
It's extra to parse on a lot of the abilities, and some of them I think there's more complicated ones than the ones you said. Like I feel like Kalani had ones that were really throwing me for a loop, And sometimes knowing about multiple characters in a unit is important, so you can't just gloss over it, because you do have to
Right.
pay attention to that sometimes, and then it it just gets, again, it's not the end of the world, but it's a little more complicated than it could be, you know.
Right. Yeah, and I don't
And
know.
we'll get
It's
used to it for sure, right? Because we've
Yeah,
yeah,
really
once
played.
I
you
think
like I've already know exactly how like Mandalorian stronger together. There's a lot going on in that line. It says after this unit makes a move action, it may use this ability. If a character in this unit is within range 2 of another allied Mandalorian character, this unit immediately makes a focus action. Like I just know every Mandalorian that has that ability, which thankfully theirs are all called the same. It's all called Mandalorians Stronger Together. It's not like Gar Saxon has one called Mandalorians Are Cool and Bo-Katan says Mandalorians Unite or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I just know, okay, Mandalorian moves. If you end your movement by another friendly Mandalorian, you get to be focused. Which I don't know. It's just kind of weird, and it feels like okay, yes, make them reusable, but why are the reusable ones that multiple people have different names?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I feel like
But yeah,
another
I'll get used to it.
example of kind of weird ability wording or design, Gar Saxon is a good example. One of his has like 3 different effects that are unrelated, but they're all under one ability. Like when you do this, this happens. When you do this, this happens. When you get a focus, you hunker. And it's like they're all under one ability, which I find weird. So I get there's not that much room on the card to split them out, and that gets
There's a lot of
confusing in a
room on the
different
card.
way.
They're like 4 by
giant.
6 inches.
Yeah. So I don't know. All just a
Yeah,
uh,
little
I think
non-ideal.
I think one thing is it's also a little tough to adjust. You know, coming from a game like Legion, where you know you will have a unit made up of multiple minis, but they're still kind of like one just cohesive thing. There just
yeah.
happens to be 5 of them on the table. Whereas like when you have a multi-character unit in Shatterpoint, they're weirdly connected but also separate. Like there's so
Yeah.
many abilities that it's like that say like when a character does this, you know, so you got to remember, okay, well this triggers, or there's even some that only say like one of Bo-Katan's abilities lets another friendly Mandalorian character do a jump. But like I misread it at first or didn't realize we weren't thinking about the difference between characters and units, and so I had both of my Craze Clan Mandos do the jump, and then later realized, oh no, that was wrong. But yeah, and then it's also weird how like they can be completely across the map, but they still share hit points, but they attack separately, and they and
It's sort of
yeah.
a like a weird like mix between Imperial Assault and Legion, where Legion they have to
Yeah.
stick together. They're almost just there to count for like hit points. In Imperial Assault, they share a card, they share abilities, but they have their own health pools, and they do their own thing. Where this one, they do their own thing, but they share their health pools, which I think a lot of the stuff that feels more abstract in this game definitely feels like it's for simplicity's sake, which I
Mhm.
can appreciate, even when it runs into some sort of like thematically funky feeling things like,
Mhm.
okay, that guy hiding in the corner, his friend died, now he's dead too. Like, I mean, a lot of times you are going to want to keep your guys together anyways, because some of them, like the Mandalorians, say, after you move, if you're by a friendly Mandalorian character, you get a free focus. Well, you can just stick with your friend, and you're always going to get a
Yeah.
focus.
See, and like that's
Um,
what I didn't quite, you know, like again, another one there, unit versus character, where like they can, you know, kind of trigger off of each other because they're both
Yeah.
different characters.
It's like after the unit does an action and one of the characters is at range of another character. Well, I mean, they're both at range of each. Yeah, it just takes a second to parse it, right? It's like kind of
yeah,
confusing wording.
yeah. I think it's initially very weird coming from other games how I mean I like they're like quantumly linked. Like if I tickle this character, that other guy is gonna giggle. Like they're the same thing, except when they're moving or shooting. But it's kind of weird, but it does make overall the gameplay a little simpler, and it makes for some interesting moments too. If you split them up, like, well, I'm going to shoot this guy and get a wound on him because now that guy way over there doesn't count on that objective he's sitting on. I don't know. It sort of
It's
feels like
interesting, but yeah,
almost a
it's like
little
not
more
intuitive
gamey.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird, but you get used to it, and it's like, okay, well, this is fine, and I can see why it would complicate things to have to track all of their conditions and wounds separately.
Yeah. It's just kind of, and it's different from other Star Wars games, right? Like, I
Right.
think if this was the first one we had played, well, I think it'd still feel a little weird, but yeah, I don't know. You might get used to it faster.
A little bit off topic from rules. One thing that I find strange coming from other stuff, like a lot of the things that are weird about this are because of past experience with other games, which I think is maybe, I don't know where the fault on that lies. Probably with me for thinking, oh, it feels like it should be like this, but it isn't. I wish there was a focus token. So the way
Yeah.
focus works, it's an action. When you take a focus, the next attack you make um, during this activation, you get to add an extra die. So I think the idea for not having a token is whenever you get a focus, it's always during your activation. There's no like hanging on to a focus for later, like in Imperial Assault or an aim in Legion. Like if you're focusing, it's on your turn and that's that. But there's still times where I'm going to be focused. I'm going to do a bunch of other stuff, and then I'm going to make my attack. And sometimes I sort of forget. So, like, I've taken to just like placing an extra die next to that character. This is with the Mandalorians; they're getting focused all the time, so they're, you know,
Yeah, all these
doing of
triggers are
like a
going,
jetpack.
you're getting
Yeah,
extra actions going off, and you kind of forget by the time you get to it, even though it's
Yeah.
like a minute or
I
whatever.
was I was thinking of I still have a box sitting around of all my old X-wing first edition cardboard. Just digging out a few of the old focus tokens from first edition and throwing like 3 or 4 in my little token box of Shatterpoint stuff.
yeah. I was thinking of grabbing some from my Imperial Assault acrylics.
Also, I'm thinking of just throwing all of the damage tokens in the garbage and getting some other games damage tokens in there because I really don't like the Shatterpoint damage tokens.
What's wrong with them? They're fine. They're fun. They're cartoony.
They're this fucking big too. I mean,
But so are the cards. It's not like it's covering up real estate. Just put it on the character art.
yeah, they're so like I got like these little like tackle boxes I use for carrying around tokens for a lot of these games, and the the 5 damage tokens just like barely squeeze in there. They're so big, and I hate it.
One thing I think the game, and it works. I prefer it this way. The game wants you to keep all tokens on the unit cards.
Hmm.
I like that. I think that's better. I think that's different from a lot of Legion players. A lot of Legion players, because it keeps it. It's harder to get that information, especially on a big game like Legion, if it's on the unit cards. With Shatterpoint, I think it's fine because you can easily tell what tokens are on what cards.
Yeah, it depends
I
on
kind of
the player too. Some people like refuse to put tokens on the table on Legion, and they hate it, and they give you dirty looks when you put your tokens on the table because they hate
that's
how it dirties up the table.
I agree. I think I've relented and I put them on the table because it's harder to keep like how much damage is on. I can't. Is that what card is that over there? It's a tiny regular sized card
Yeah.
5 feet away from me. I don't know what's going on.
Although I guess I did run into that less in Legion, more in X-wing.
Yeah, I mean it depends so much because sometimes the tokens really start to pile up, and you're like, gosh, we're moving them constantly. But other people will be like, the rules say you're supposed to put it here. I've seen that in Armada where people will go, no, the speed dial's supposed to be next to the ship, and it's like, come on, it's just in the way. Can I just leave it back here on the edge? And
At Legion Worlds, you did not put anything on your cards except maybe like a bounty token, but not even that. Um, what I want to say is I feel like I guess I could just use another wound token. I feel like that's the most relevant information to have right next to the miniature is are they wounded or not? Because when you're looking like,
Yeah,
do I have to
because it
worry
flips.
about
Yeah,
that guy near that objective?
yeah.
Like, do I care about him right now?
And that
And
was the
that's
one token I found a little unintuitive compared to others. I was like, wait, which side is which again?
right.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
explain it as clearly as it could.
I think it
You have to look at
would
the image. The image example makes it easier, but like it doesn't
I think
say in the
that's
rules.
I think that's has a lot to do with the Star Wars IP
Uh-huh.
because I could very easily design a token where one side is wounded and one side is injured if it wasn't Star Wars. I'd put like a cut with blood coming out of it on one side that's wounded, and I'd put a band-aid on the other side that's injured. Like one is an active issue, one is like something that happened to me in the past. But you can't have a band-aid in Star Wars or whatever. This is what I've exactly one of my units. So I've got Django here, and when he's wounded, I will uh, do that. Magnetize his head and I put a magnet in the base too, so I can just set it at his feet.
Only when he's wounded, not when he's
Yeah, only when
defeated.
he's wounded, I'll do that. But so I guess he'll like put it back on his head. He's like, I'm okay again.
I mean, like rules issues aside, some of it was like a little annoying. A lot of that was because we haven't played very much, and it'll end up being fine. I feel like, and again, our big rules issue where we weren't actually playing it right. But overall, I feel like I did enjoy it, and it has a lot of potential. There's like it's just kind of a different style game than Legion. I like having this kind of simpler, faster squad building where it's like, okay, we have kind of these limited options. You're not going to spam any units. You're going to get your squad out there and kind of run to these objectives, and a bunch of action's going to happen. You know, it was definitely tricky during our first game to like keep track of all the different abilities that we hadn't used before, but I think that'll come quick. And in the end, it'll be like, oh, there's all this neat stuff like popping off, right? I even
Right.
after one game, I'm already noticing that I feel like I understand the stats a lot better. Like I remember reading the preview articles and being like, all these characters look the same to me. Where they all do damage and stuns or whatever things, but now they all seem very different. It's like, ooh, the red Mandos are like this, and the blue Mandos are like this. Ooh, that's very interesting for squad building, And it seems like there's a lot of options already, so it makes me excited to play more.
Yeah, it does have just a lot of just the gameplay is so like when they were saying like it's like a Saturday morning cartoon or whatever, they really were saying that a lot. And after playing it, I'm like, yes, it is because nobody's like being murdered, but everybody's beating the shit out of each other and pushing each other around. And it's all these like heroic type characters for the most part.
Yeah, and even
I,
the
I
like
really
generic
like the
squads, they feel useful in a different way because like having the two guys is like a really interesting, sort of powerful thing, even though they're kind of these cheapo
right.
guys.
It's good for area control, and they're shooting
Like focus
twice when you shoot
fire.
with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Also, just before the game setup, putting the terrain around the map is just very fun. It's almost like building a little. I don't know. It's something about it feels so much more interesting than setting up Legion terrain, where it's like, well, let's just throw this stuff out there, and it's kind of maybe it'll be interesting. Mostly, I just care about blocking line of sight. Where in this game, it's like, oh, we're going to put the little ladder over here. We're going to put this up here. Make sure this objective is up top, and there's a lot more like the verticality is a big part of the way you need to look at the
I
battlefield.
guess. I didn't really feel the same. I kind of felt like, and again, we haven't played enough, but I kind of felt like most of this terrain doesn't matter. Like you're just gonna
Well,
run over it and not get cover from most angles and all this stuff. So I was like, I don't really
well,
care where any of this
that's
goes.
also we were also the way it ended up being after we put down the terrain, then we put down the mission markers or the objective tokens, and 8 of the 9 objective tokens were all down on ground level. Only one ended up being up on an elevation. So
Yeah,
there
I
wasn't
think
like a lot of incentive to go up, really.
technically in the rules, you're supposed to put the tokens down first and then you put the terrain down,
Yeah.
which does make it a little easier to make sure that you're going to make sure like, 3 or 4 or 5 of them are elevated, which makes a big difference, I think, because if you have one that's elevated, it's harder to get up there because you have to do a climb to get up if there's not a ladder nearby. And then if you're shoving people off of that height, because there's a lot of shoves pushing them off, now it makes it harder to get back up. It's a lot harder to come back to a elevated one than one on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely does feel like it makes a big difference when a number of the objectives are at some sort of elevation.
Speaking of ladders, an interesting thing I saw is because I know I've seen some people try and mess with doing magnets and stuff. I think you tried, but said you
I
hated it.
magnetized one, and I mean, it works actually pretty well, but it was just too much effort for me to want to do anymore.
Is I saw someone who took those little like foot stub railing that they have that's supposed to go on like the bridges kind of.
Uh huh.
Someone took and they like glued the ladder onto that,
Uh-huh.
and then they can just stick that in the channeling that goes around all the roofs kind of wherever they want.
Yeah, I've seen some people they're starting to make 3D printed little hooks for your ladders so you can place them anywhere you want, but I guess you
Mm-hmm.
could do that with the railings right out of the gate. They're not railings. The assembly guide calls them railings.
they they seem
The
more like
railings
a
for your
thing that would
ankles.
they seem like more like a thing that would actually make you more likely to trip on them and fall
Yeah.
over off of whatever.
I'm gonna probably end up painting mine as if those are just little running lights along the gantries, because that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. How did you guys find one of the biggest, like? 'Cause I think the game is very quick. It's very fast. I like its vibe. I think it slows down whenever you have to make an attack. I think that's going to speed up as you're more familiar with the game and the characters. But how did you guys feel about the interpretation of the dice that's required? It seems there's a lot to like parse when you got my hits, my fails, my expertise, my sprits. Okay, do your thing. How many you're blocking? This is what I'm adding. Even though there's no choices to be made there, there's still a lot of like interpretation required in the dice.
I hate that they put commas between each symbol on the expertise charts, because to me the commas symbolize like a set of options. You know what I'm saying?
Well, wouldn't the word "or" be in there if that were the case? I
Well,
guess
no,
there's
it's
an
like
implied "and."
yeah, it's like when
Like
you
if
have a
it's
list of things, you put
and
a
it's like
comma between them.
1 to 3, so you might think, oh, I only have one, so I take the first one, right?
Yeah, and then if I have a second expertise, then I get that second hit.
I
Like
I guess I never looked at it that way at all. I was just like, okay, if I have 1 to 3, this is the chunk of things I get. If I have 4 plus, these are the ones I get.
yeah, I if it was me, it would have just said okay. If it was 1 to 3, it would just be like hit or whatever, not hit comma hit, because like I said, you usually like I said, it's usually when you have like a list of things and there's like possibly a choice to make between those lists, you put them
I
separated
wonder
by
if it
commas.
I
has to
think it
do
would
with timing.
it would get
Like,
confusing with the conversion ones, I think, because then it says it has, symbol, arrow, other symbol, and it's like if there were multiple without a comma, you'd say, oh, does this convert to 2, or is this
right.
2 separate entries? And that's probably the main reason.
And I think maybe it has to do with ones like that. I think I saw some people asking about there's some cases where it might actually matter if I'm doing converting all of those, like getting all those results immediately, or if I'm getting them one at a time. Like, I don't remember the example. It might have had something to do with
Mm,
Luminara's
that
ability tree, but
I hope
I don't
not.
know.
That sounds annoying.
Yeah.
But
At any rate,
I will say most of the attacks felt pretty quick because a lot of the people are just convert to blocks, convert to hits. And it was like, oh, well, here's the total, do your chart. I think it gets complicated when you do have other symbols. Because again, like the expertise chart symbols, some of them trigger at the end, even though you look at the chart early, right? Like if you heal off your expertise, you heal at the end. And then that's when it gets complicated. Some, you're supposed to do the tree results in order, except for certain ones, like the active ability ones, those trigger again at the end, even though they're in the middle of the tree
Right.
potentially. So there's a few cases like that with certain characters where I think it will get fiddly and annoying. But at least for me, in the one game we did, I felt like it was less fiddly than most Imperial Assault characters. Like I
Yeah,
hated the
that's
dice in Imperial Assault where you're like, and it's just the way people have to do it. But like, okay, I'm going
I
to cover up
agree.
this one and move this one. Oh wait, I canceled that, so uncover that. And it felt pretty fast in here. Where it was just like, oh, I have 4 blocks, I have 3 hits or whatever. And it was like pretty quick mostly.
That's what I was thinking compared to Imperial Salt, where there's technically like less. I don't know. There's like 3 things you got to care about on Imperial Salt, and they're canceling each other, and then there's choices because you're like, well, does this surge? How do I want to resolve this result? Whereas there's not really
True.
the only
You
choices
just
is
get
how
that
to go
row.
through the tree, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's gonna be fiddly bits, but I don't think it's gonna end up, especially once you're experienced with it. Because I've even found myself already going like, well, I got 3 successes, take 5 damage, get these 2 conditions, we're done. Like we don't like it, if you can go step by step, but a lot of times it's not necessary.
I did enjoy when I just like walked up to Maul with Anakin on like his first activation and just whacked Maul so hard he was immediately wounded. And
Yeah, that's Anakin can just wreck people.
although Maul's ability like let him make like a 8 dice counter attack on me or something like that, didn't it?
Yeah, which was cool. And then it was like, because it,
But you still only did 2 damage with that.
yeah. I mean, it kind of sucks to be like, oh, I just got wounded that fast on my 11 health guy. But on the other hand, it was like, oh, but now I'm like charged up. So that made Maul seem really more fun. So I would say, like, as far as the things that were fun and the things that were less fun, again, other than like our big mistake, we would have been running around a lot faster if we did that right. But I feel like the biggest thing was the ranges are so short compared to other games. Like the longest one, range 5, is 10 inches, which is like nothing compared to. I know it's just a different game, it's a different style, but that was the one kind of feel bad moment that kept happening. Was like I couldn't get in range with anyone. Again, if we played it again, a lot of characters would have extra movement, but a lot of people wouldn't. It's like it is a little easier to get into melee. I will say that because it's a range 2, but like one specific moment that stood out to me was I finally got to go with Gar Saxon. I was like, here's my longest range guy. Ooh, I got a free focus. I got sharpshooter 2. I got, I don't know, all these things popping off, and I'm about to shoot a clone to death. Oh no, you're out of range because 5 is nothing. And I was like, this sucks. I can't shoot with my best guy. Why can't I do something? You know what I mean? It was
a lot
frustrating.
Of it definitely is. If you played it properly, Gar Saxon would have had a free jump, which is,
and then I would have lost the objective.
Amount of,
but then he wouldn't have been on the objective.
Yeah, but I will say, I think in the long run, once I get used to that, I think it could end up being a little bit of a benefit. Like what it will do is it'll feel like you really have to be careful about your tactical choices, right? Like since you don't have infinite range, you have to worry about the positioning and the movement a lot more. But still, the ranges
force everybody into more of a rumble, which is more fun.
Kind of. But I mean, we'll see. And you can jump out of melee quickly and all this stuff, but it was frustrating. It was like I want to be in range with something and no one is. You know what I mean?
One thing I think might be overlooked is when you shove somebody in your combat tree, not only do you push them away, you're allowed to move your guy that distance closer to them. So there's all these little like ways to get free movement that everybody's just scooting around.
But it's only range 1, which is tiny. It's like nothing.
Yeah, see, but I usually didn't
enough to get people away from the objective a lot of times, especially if you got multiple. When I was playing with Bethany, I had Gar Saxon. He comes up, he's like, okay, I'm gonna take this from Anakin, and then Anakin attacks him and hit like 3 shoves, and now he's all the way back across the map, and then 2 other people shot him, and Gar Saxon's like spinning around on his jetpack or something. Like I can't believe how far he is from where I ended his turn. I think a lot of the movement stuff it feels very fun to me.
Yeah. The other mechanic that I found very interesting, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel, but compared to other games, a very unique mechanic is the whole struggle track and the way that the objectives are like constantly pulling it back and forth. Um, it was interesting because it's like a lot more immediate use of the objectives than Legion. You're like, I got to pull this to me right away, right? And you're wounding people, so you're moving the black cubes too. It was very interesting. It could scale up very quickly, but I also felt like the downside, again, at least in our learning game, was how it like almost scaled up too fast. It was like I haven't gone with my guys yet. Like I want to do some stuff, but we're already like moving on to the next phase. Like I want to do more with my guys, not just be done already. You know?
It feels like you if you play a struggle game, you're gonna get through your deck maybe like two and a half, three times.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like you should be going through it a lot, but
Both
that's
of
not
the
in
well,
practice.
the first game I played went three struggles against Chris, who doesn't lose games and is very good at everything, and it was very close. Every struggle, like we had one struggle where both of the things were like right there, and so anybody getting 1 point would get it, which seemed very cool. Then when I played Bethany, she was feeling annoyed because she was winning most of the time. So every time I scored points, the struggle marker was still on my opponent's side, which means I got a momentum. So I kept getting momentum on my turn because I was losing. So it was sort of like a catch up thing. But after enough of that, it basically seemed like, well, I am just as close to winning as you are, despite having been losing the whole time, which I think kind of annoyed her. But I was like, I guess it's kind of cool. It sort of evens it out, so I don't feel like I'm getting my ass kicked the whole time.
Yeah.
Like
Otherwise,
I
you could
am
be
getting
like
my
way
ass kicked, but
behind.
it doesn't feel like it. Doesn't look like
And
it on paper.
what
And
that there,
then,
that
oh,
reminds me of one of the rules we weren't clear on is so if say the struggle is over on Kurt's side of the tracker or the
uh-huh.
um and then it's my turn, I end my turn, I don't control any objectives, so I don't
Okay.
score a point. Do I still get a momentum?
That's a very good question. I'm
Because
not
the
going to look it up
rules
right now. I
say
don't.
that after you move the struggle marker
Yeah, I think
and
that one is going to
and
need
is like
clarification.
then you get a momentum if it's still over on your opponent's
Right.
side.
And there's
But
other rules
is
that say
moving
like,
it zero? Does
yeah,
that zero spaces count? I don't
exactly.
know.
There's other rules that say even zero. And again, kind of a fault to the rule book. We were like trying to dig through and find it, and a lot of little things like that we kind of had to give up on because it's like we're not finding it. Like we just need to like figure it out another time. But those are the type of little things that, as precise as they are on some of the abilities, like the whole thing we said about characters and units, whatever. Right? There's
Yeah.
like a lot of wording on those, and then there's other abilities that we found that was like it doesn't say at all. So we took our best guess and maybe that was correct, but it was like I just want something that says explicitly that yes, this means this or whatever, you know. So there's a few things like that.
Yeah. And I think until there's going to be like lots of events, it's going to be a lot of people going, well, I guess this is what seems right. Or maybe this was the intention. I don't know until there's official rulings, which they
Yeah.
have been putting up rulings. Um, I, I feel like, okay, I'm really into this game. I'm really liking it, and I feel like we've spent the last 50 minutes going, you know what, this is things it does wrong, which I don't think we were wrong to say they did those things wrong, but I think we should try and talk about some things that we like about the game.
Ugh, fine.
Mini moth in my flying around my
Well,
ring
it
light.
could be
Go away.
it could be worse. I had a moth
Oh, I thought
slamming
you were talking about
against.
the game.
No, I had a
That's my
moth.
positive review of Shatterpoint. It could be worse.
That's the Midwestern review of it right there. The
Oh
Minnesota
yeah, I can't
review.
complain.
Could
It's
be worse.
it's different.
Could be worse. Could be. Um, no, I was sitting playing Zelda last night, and something kept banging into my window, and there's a moth like that
Oh my
big.
god.
I was like not sure. I was like, is that actually a moth, or is it like a bat
Bat.
or a bird slamming into my window over and over again? But
Jeez.
it was
I didn't know they
enormous.
came that big around there. I thought that's all like rainforest stuff. I could run down my list of favorite things, and you guys can tell me if you agree with it being a very cool thing.
Yeah, do it.
Do it.
I
Since
love
you're obviously
it's
the most positive out of the three of us.
I mean, it's a very me kind of game. It gives me some of those Imperial Assault vibes where, you know, it's character focused, like they said. I got these big minis of these characters I really like. It feels like this is about them doing stuff, not like a whole army doing a thing. You know what I mean? It's got more character. Like I wish it makes me feel like I wish they could just make unique Shatterpoint original Star Wars characters like Imperial Assault had Imperial Assault characters. Like just make a cool weirdo who can do stuff. Um, I
Make a
really like
turtle.
the yeah Turgle
Oh
Win.
yeah.
Um, I like the wound system. I think the fact that you can get wounded, sort of be out of the fight for a turn on timeout, which is kind of how I think of it. When people are like, you can shoot them, but they're not going to take any damage. They're like, hold on, wait, give me a second. Which
It's
sometimes is
nice
the
because it's like being wounded is like a setback for sure. It costs more force and stuff, but you're not completely out yet. And like you said, like you're kind of stunned for a moment, but you can keep going, and that's really cool. You're not going to get alphaed the same way you would in
right,
90% of war
exactly.
games.
Right. Yeah. None of this new mini you just spent a week painting isn't going to get wiped off the table. Maybe at all, because even if they're wounded, or they have enough injuries equal to their durability. I think.
Stamina, I think it's called, isn't it?
Vitality.
I think stamina is how many wounds until you're wounded, and durability is how many injuries until you're defeated. I don't know. But I like that you still get one more turn before you're taken off the table. So there's never that like feels bad moment of I just got dumped on and now this guy's off the table before I get to do anything about it.
You're right. It's durability.
Yeah, I think that's a
I
really cool
really like
system
that.
overall that should help with a lot of players. And again, it's still bad to get wounded, but you're like, okay, at least, you know,
Right.
they can't just completely wipe me off. Yeah, it's interesting. Maul seems like the one character so far that gets any benefit from being wounded, I think, right? Which is
Right.
fun. It would be neat if there were like a few more that maybe got
Yeah.
something little, like you get a
I bet there'll
free,
be
I don't know.
some Wookiees or something, because like that's sort
Hmm.
of been a thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a common thing with Wookiees in tabletop games, is when they get wounded, they get pissed off.
Another thing I really like, I love the chaos of it, like the order deck specifically.
Yeah.
And the like the struggles where you roll the die to see where the priority goes. It just screwed me over, which I was like, I don't know, should I be mad or should I laugh at that? Where it picked the priority to be the one where my opponent already had a thing, which meant, oh, 2 free points for you, and there's nothing I can do about it. But like, I kind of like how random it is. I love the order deck being random with a little bit of control with the reserve and the Shatterpoint card,
Yeah.
because
I
it's
like that
just
a lot. It like some people are going to be annoyed that they lose some of their choice, but you save a lot of time by not having to
right.
spend so much
There's
time
no decisions.
deciding. Yeah.
I don't have to make a decision when it doesn't go my way. It's not my fault, and it's sort of fun to have to like react to what crap it's throwing at you.
I think knowing when to reserve is gonna become a big part of the
Right.
game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Similar to that, I like that. I think I said this earlier too, but I like that the list building is very simplified in a lot of ways. It
Hmm.
I still think there's a lot of choice within it, especially since there's like basically no faction limits and stuff other than like how much you want to combo, right? But the fact
Right.
that you have these two sets of three and you have these specific ranks, it like feels very quick to like put a list together and be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. What if I did Dooku and whoever, whatever. And I think that's neat.
I really like, related to the order deck and the list building, sort of comes out of both of those. I like how there's no activation advantage, something that
Yeah.
annoys me in Legion and Imperial Assault and other games. The fact that everyone is required to have 6 units, there's just never any activation advantage. And then if a unit is taken off the table, I love that there's no turns or rounds. It just keeps flowing.
Yeah, you just
So
get through
like,
your deck faster,
yeah, I'm just
honestly.
gonna
That's
get
kind
through
of
my
cool.
deck faster. Yeah, it's not. There's not going to be a point where because half of my guys are dead, you're going to have twice as many turns before I can
Yeah.
react.
I'm
So
just sitting and waiting for you to do the rest of your army. That's
right,
never fun.
and I really love that. It still obviously sucks to lose your people, but you don't have that extra downside. So I really like the fact that activation advantage is just not even close to
Yeah.
being a possibility.
And like related to that and related to the order of drawing your order deck, I like that there's way less emphasis on last first type stuff. It's like
Well, you can't
such
really last first unless
yeah,
you. I mean, you could do some stuff with, with the Shatterpoint card or
yeah,
reserving,
Yeah,
but
I
that's
guess if
really
you,
just more like,
it'd
it
be very lucky. You'd have to be
yeah,
very lucky.
it's almost nothing. Whereas I'm so used to so many games where it's like the number one only strategy. You have to build your whole list around that and play around that every time, and it's the whole meta is last first. That gets very
And you
old for me. So I like that that's way reduced.
you could have I get it, but it would be real fun when it does happen. Like you could draw your
Yeah,
Shatterpoint card, draw Anakin, shuffle your deck. The first card you draw is Anakin, and then you draw your Shatterpoint card.
Shatterpoint
And go, so you
again.
go
That
Anakin
would be
4 times in a row,
insane. That would kind of
and
be
you'd be like,
annoying.
"Well, that's just ridiculous." But it's so unlikely. It would be very cool, even if that happened to me. I'd be like, "That's crazy."
Yeah, that would be
I
wild.
mean,
um,
I like
since
the. Go
since
ahead.
you mentioned that you liked the list building, Kurt. What do you think of the list building for the was it the Premier Showdowns? Have you looked at that for
No, I
like the
haven't.
tournaments at all?
I think it's cool.
It's so normally you build a squad, or I mean a strike team made out of two squads, right?
Mhm.
For the Premier Showdown, you don't like register a strike team. Instead, you bring four squads with you.
Hmm.
And then what is it then, like each round you pick
Yeah,
two?
you pick 2 of them with the requirement that by the end of the tournament, each of your squads will have been used at least once.
It's kind of interesting. That's it's neat that you wouldn't be playing the same army every single match. That's kind of like a lot. It's basically like two armies, but it's kind of fun to mix and match them as you
Yeah.
go.
I mean, it's a core
It's tough
set's
right
worth
now.
of minis.
Yeah, I think it'd be tough right now where that's there's not much more than four squads, but uh, that could be really interesting long term. It's kind of neat.
It's similar. It sounds way more interesting to me than how Crisis Protocol just has it by default. Where I think Crisis Protocol is like you bring 10 points worth of guys, and then when you pick the objective might say, okay, you can only have 5 points of guys or 6 points of guys. So you bring more guys than you're ever going to use, and you tailor that to the mission that comes into play.
Mm.
But like, well, I'm going to bring Hulk, and he's never going to hit the table because of the missions that flop down. With this, I think it's cool because you're going to bring guys that are sitting out, but they'll get in. They have to be played.
Yeah, there's kind of an interesting strategic there that you can't just use your one good thing the whole time.
I didn't remember. Do they still enforce uniqueness between all four squads in the?
I think so. It'd be weird if they didn't.
Mm.
Yeah, I assume they would, but otherwise, yeah, it would be sort of funny to be like, all right, well, I've got actually two Anakin squads here, and I mean, obviously, you couldn't
Yeah,
use them together in a game, but you could then that way possibly have multiple round, like basically always have Anakin all the time. Although I guess you wouldn't need to do that, I guess, because you just have to use all 4 squads. So it could always just be always your Anakin squad and then
Rotate
just
the
cycle
other.
out the
Yeah,
second one. So
that's true.
I guess depending on how many rounds the event has, but I assume for the premier showdowns, they're going to be the bigger events where you're going to be having more um, more rounds. Speaking of events, that's one thing I do like is that around, I think it's going to go a game is going to go faster than a game of Legion.
Only just. I mean, once everyone's more familiar with the game, it'll probably move pretty quickly. But I mean, 3 struggles still can take a little while.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I
what
could
do you
see
guys? How?
scenarios where you're not really taking the objective, so the momentum's not moving very quickly.
Yeah, or if you're playing, really evenly, and you keep like I've got 3 objectives, and then now you took it from me. Now you got 3. Now I take it back. Now you got. If it's gonna be like real even, which makes the momentum and the struggle just kind of keep the same distance. But um, now that you've like had your hands on all the cards and the box and everything, what is your take on the art direction of the game?
I love the art. I like the
I
graphic
like.
design of the cards. I think, like other than the commas in the expertise charts, I
Mm-hmm.
think that like the expertise charts and the um,
The
like your
size of the
damage
damage token.
like your damage chart is, they're pretty intuitive to read and step through. um, I think the cards are way bigger than they need to be,
Yeah,
you
they take up a
know
lot of space. It's like your whole 3 foot area is just the
but
card.
at the same time you've got this really beautiful art that, like, that's the thing that always sucked about Legion is some of the cards have really beautiful art on them, but then you've got it just in a little tiny corner of the
Yeah,
of
Yeah.
the card, unless you get like some promo, like full art card.
there's it's not going to work for me because I'm going to be putting my cards in like top loaders that are made for like postcards or something to protect them when I play. But if you don't have them in that, or if you have a sleeve that's actually the right size, because the top loaders I have are like a couple millimeters too big on each side. I bought 4x6 top loaders, is what I found on Amazon. If you want to do the same thing, it was like 25 for $7, which is pretty good. Um, if you lay out your cards, all 6 of your cards in a row end to end, it's exactly 3 feet. So if you don't have a 3x3, if you're playing on a whatever, you just put those cards down, and then I'll tell you exactly how wide your play area needs to be.
Hot
Um,
tip from us.
Yeah,
You heard it here first.
I yeah I
yeah,
I
you should
like
make a
the
video out of that one, Joe. That tip.
things that you didn't tell you about Shatterpoint.
5 things.
Yeah, I really like the art. It makes it feel a little more. I don't know. It gives it a certain character that I think if this game had the same, you know, catalog of art as all the other Star Wars games, it wouldn't feel the same kind of. I don't know what word it is, but it wouldn't feel the same.
I'm enjoying that both this and Unlimited are skewing more towards this comic book cartoony style of art.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it looks good. I think it fits the game good. I honestly, personally like the card art better than the minis. The the style there, but I know
yeah.
most people like the minis a lot. So
I like the
The
minis.
the minis look good. I think some of the minis are big pains in the ass to assemble. I prefer the heroic proportions, with the larger hands and heads, for minis this size. Personally, like I think, um, especially on some characters, like the hands just feel too small. So,
yeah,
um,
some of the
but
poses I don't like as much. Like they're slightly off. Like I said somewhere else, to me, the Legion sculpts are basically all A plus, and most of the Shatterpoint ones are A minus, which is like still good, but it's not
yeah.
A plus. So
And for
just
me,
me
it's
personally.
for me, it's more like it's not so much that I don't like the pose, is like I don't like the fact that some of these poses are like, they're being held up in the air by like a teeny tiny little bit of plastic connecting the rocket pack to the smoke. Um,
They're not
Yeah, at least
very
with
customized.
Bo-Katan, they connected one of her feet as
yeah,
well.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and I've had that same complaint about a couple of the like MCP figures I've got too, where it's just sort of like a person's jumping in the air and being held aloft by the thinnest sliver of plastic possible. That you're just sort of all like even just painting it, I'm all like, oh, I can't even brush on this too hard or I might snap it. It's sort of what it feels like.
Unless anyone has any clothing thoughts. Anyone have any clothing thoughts?
uh,
Yeah, get
my
some sleeves, Joe. Get a real shirt.
It's hot here.
my last question: uh, out of the few games we've played, is there like one character that really stands out to you guys that like, oh, this is the one that really worked for me or whatever that I really
Ventress.
want to build around Ventress?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I don't know why, just painting it, I'm like, this is maybe my favorite mini I've ever painted. I like the sculpt a lot, and I like the paint job I did. And then on the table, she's just the Dathomirian dexterity, the ability to jump twice. So, you can get across the whole board to get to an objective if you need to with that. Just the hypermobility plus her force push is very fun to just because normally you're just shoving people, which is useful, but doesn't really send them away
Mm-hmm.
too far. And then force pushes is a range 3. You get to put them within range 3 of Ventress, which is just bye bye, like get out of here. That's Ventress is my pick for my favorite character currently. I'm excited to try out Django.
Yeah, he
Uh,
seems really good.
I
Did
think
anything
for me, it
stand out
was
to you?
just Anakin, just because he smacked you hard as hell. I think you know, getting to play getting more reps in with like say like the Mandalorians and being able to learning to keeping them tighter knit so they trigger their focuses and stuff like that. And same thing like um, we didn't play quite long enough for like the some of my clone troopers, the clone
Mhm.
troopers and Rex to be able to do their um, synergistic things.
Yeah, it feels like there's potential for a lot of fun kind of combo lists. Like, let me use both types of Mandalorians. Let me do an like an all droid list or an all clone list, and like have all these abilities going off. But it also seems fun. That's like, well, I don't have to do that though. I could kind of mix these and have kind of an interesting build that doesn't directly combo, but still like kind of fits well. There's a lot of even without that many units released or announced yet, it's like I think there's some kind of fun list building options in it that are fun to think about.
Yeah, I'm already like, oh, well, I want to run Grievous, basically everything in the Grievous box with Ventress, Kalani, and the battle droids. Just have
Hmm.
sort of a classic droid army going on there. I guess since there's fewer of them and they're bigger, and the space required to melee is not base contact. When there is like a big furball of like a brawl happening, it looks really cool and exciting as opposed to Legion, where it's just like everyone's just kind of like glommed onto each other. That's going to do it for our first impressions. I'm pretty hyped, and I think you guys are. We'll see how you feel after you play properly again.
Yeah, I really just want to
Um,
play some more.
yeah, I really want to get another game in. I don't think I'll be able to play again until Friday. Um, but please tell us in the comments or somewhere how you're finding the game, how wrong or right we are about our opinions, and if you what
I was
you
gonna
got
say
something to say?
they can write their comments on. We haven't asked for them to like write their comments on like a sealed box of like CCG boosters or anything like that and mail them
Yeah.
to us in quite a while. So
How much
I
does
think
it
it's I
cost
think
to run
it's
a PO box? Because if we do that, then maybe people will be more likely. Because we can give them a real address.
If
But
they,
we should mention the giveaway, right?
Oh yeah, if you're listening to this, we are doing a core box giveaway, which you can find the details of on our website jodocast.com or on our YouTube channel. There's a video about it. So if you want a chance to win that, that's going to run through the whole month of June. I'll pick a winner at the end of the month, so you've probably got plenty of time to get in on that. If you are thinking about trying this game, why not try and win it? Because entering the giveaway supports us and it helps you maybe get a thing for free. And if you want to support us in other ways, you can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/thejodocast. Or you can join our YouTube channel, become a member of our YouTube channel, which is sort of similar to Patreon. It supports us in a similar way, but you get custom emojis when you leave comments on our YouTube.
And even if you don't do that, we got a lot of great videos up there for Shatterpoint and Legion and other things, and more coming quick too. So yeah.
Yup. Good times in Star Wars game galaxy.